I never thought a simple BBQ would turn into a war. But that's exactly what happened in my neighborhood when the HOA decided my family gatherings were a public nuisance. You see, my wife and I have always believed in one thing: family comes first. Every Sunday evening, after a long week, we'd fire up the grill in our backyard. My kids would run around with their cousins. Neighbors would stop by. We'd share food, laughter, and music. Nothing fancy, just burgers, ribs, and the smell of charcoal filling the air. For us, it wasn't just about food, it was about tradition. My father used to host BBQs when I was young, and some of my best childhood memories were made sitting under the stars with family, eating grilled corn and listening to old stories. I wanted to give my kids that same joy. But apparently, joy was a problem for my HOA. It started with a letter, a stiff, formal notice taped to my front door. Dear homeowner, you are in violation of community policy regarding noise, smoke, and gatherings exceeding a reasonable size. I laughed at first. I mean, come on, who complains about BBQs? But the HOA wasn't laughing. They followed up with another notice, then another. Then came the fines: $100 here, $250 there, and leading the charge was the HOA president herself, a woman named Marjorie. She was the kind of person who walked around with a clipboard and a permanent scowl. You know, the type always peeking through curtains, always ready to report someone for having their trash can an inch too far from the curb. She hated my BBQs. She hated the laughter, the music, the smell of ribs on the grill. One day, she marched right up to me in the middle of a cookout. Guests were arriving. Kids were playing. Smoke was rising from the grill. There she was, hands on her hips, glaring at me like I was committing a crime. Mr. Johnson, she said, this has to stop. You're disturbing the peace of the neighborhood. If you continue, we will take legal action. I looked at her, tongs in one hand, a plate of burgers in the other, and I couldn't help but smile. Marjorie, I said, the only thing disturbing, the peace right now is you. The guests laughed. She didn't. That's when I knew this wasn't going to end with a couple of letters. This was going to be a battle. And what she didn't know was that I wasn't about to back down. Marjorie stormed away that evening, muttering something about rules being rules. I brushed it off, thinking maybe she'd cool down. But oh no, that was just the beginning. A week later, I got a certified letter in the mail. Thick envelope. Official stamp, HOA, letterhead. Inside was a formal violation notice, stating that my BBQs were a continuing offense. They slapped me with another $500 fine and threatened to place a lien on my property if I didn't comply now. If you've ever dealt with an HOA, you know they love their legal jargon. This thing was full of phrases like failure to remedy. The violation will result in escalation of enforcement actions. Basically, they were trying to scare me into submission. But here's the thing, I wasn't scared. I was angry. My wife, on the other hand, was worried. Honey, she said, maybe we should just stop the BBQs. It's not worth the stress. I looked at her, then at my kids, who were sitting at the table with wide eyes, listening in. I shook my head. No, I said firmly. If we give in now, what's next? They'll tell us when we can park, how many guests we can have, what color socks we should wear on Sundays. This isn't about BBQs anymore. It's about freedom. And I meant it. The next Sunday, I fired up the grill again. This time, I made it bigger than ever. I invited more neighbors, more friends, even coworkers. The backyard was alive with chatter. Smoke curling into the sky. Kids laughing as they chased each other across the grass. And of course, like clockwork, Marjorie showed up. She stood at the edge of my yard, clipboard in hand, scribbling furiously. She snapped photos of my grill, the guests, even the coolers filled with drinks. At one point, she even tried to measure how far the smoke was drifting. I'm not kidding, you would have thought she was conducting a scientific experiment on smoke, particles of disruption. Then she did something that made my blood boil. She called the cops. Yes, she actually called the police on a family BBQ. 2 officers showed up, their patrol car pulling into the cul-de-sac. My guests grew quiet, and I could feel everyone's eyes on me. Marjorie practically ran toward them, waving her arms like she had just caught a bank robber red-handed. Officers, this man is breaking HOA rules. He's disturbing the peace, creating a fire hazard, and the officer held up his hand. Ma'am, calm down. We'll handle this. They walked over to me. One of them glanced at the grill, at the kids playing tag, at the neighbors enjoying food and music. He sighed. Sir, he said, we got a call about a disturbance, but honestly, it just looks like a regular barbecue to me. Shrugged. That's all it is, officer. Just a family gathering. Marjorie jumped in, red-faced. It's against HOA rules. He's violating community guidelines. You need to shut this down immediately. The officer turned to her, clearly annoyed. Ma'am, unless there's illegal activity going on, this is not a police matter. We don't enforce HOA rules. You should have seen her face. It was priceless, she sputtered. But, you don't understand. This is a violation. Ma'am? The officer repeated, this is a family BBQ. We're not shutting it down. And just like that, they left. The guests erupted into cheers. My kids laughed. I flipped another burger onto the grill, and I swear the food tasted even better that night. But Marjorie didn't back down. If anything, the embarrassment only fueled her determination. The next day, found out she had called an emergency HOA board meeting. Word spread quickly around the neighborhood, and although most people stayed quiet in public, a few of them slipped me texts of support. We're on your side, one neighbor wrote. She's gone too far. Still, nobody wanted to go against her openly. The thing about HOA's fear keeps people in line. But I was done being afraid, and little did I know, the real war was just beginning. The so-called emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday evening in the clubhouse. I didn't want to go, frankly. I had better things to do, but my wife insisted. If you don't show up, she said, they'll twist the story and make you look like the villain. So, I went. The clubhouse was packed. Marjorie sat at the front like a queen holding court, her trusty clipboard laid out in front of her. The rest of the board members were beside her, most of them looking uncomfortable. Like they didn't want to be there, but didn't dare challenge her authority. As soon as the meeting began, Marjorie wasted no time. We are here tonight to discuss the ongoing violations committed by Mr. Johnson, she announced, pointing a finger at me like she was a prosecutor in a courtroom. People shifted in their seats. Some looked at me with sympathy, others with fear. She rattled off a list of offenses: noise pollution, excessive smoke, unauthorized large gatherings. It was ridiculous. Every word dripped with venom. When she finally stopped, I raised my hand. May I respond? She sneered. Briefly. I stood up. All I'm doing is cooking food in my backyard. I'm not running a nightclub. I'm not blasting music at 2 in the morning, and I'm not endangering anyone. I'm feeding my family. That's it. And if having friends and neighbors over for a meal is such a crime, then maybe the real problem isn't meets this HOA. A few people clapped. Quickly, Marjorie banged her gavel against the table, scowling. Order. There will be no applause. But it was too late. The cracks were showing. People were tired of her reign of control. After a heated back and forth, the board voted to escalate the matter. They officially declared my BBQs a violation of community standards and approved further enforcement measures. That meant more fines, more harassment, and possibly even legal threats. I left the meeting furious, but also more determined than ever. That night, Sitting at the kitchen table, I looked at my wife and said, "Enough is enough. If she wants a war, she's got one. But we're not fighting it alone." I picked up my phone and called a friend of mine who worked in media. He wasn't a big-time reporter or anything, but he had connections. I told him everything, the letters, the fines, the cops, the HOA meeting. He listened, then chuckled. "You." "No," he said. "This would make one heck of a story." Neighborhood HOA tries to ban family BBQs. People eat this stuff up. "You sure you want to take it public?" I paused for a moment, then I smiled. "Oh, I'm sure." The following weekend, we planned another BBQ, but this one was different. We made sure it was the biggest one yet. My brother brought his massive smoker. Neighbors brought dishes to share. Kids brought friends. The smell of grilled ribs and corn filled the air. And right there, parked discreetly across the street, was a news van. When the cameras came out, my heart raced. Part of me was nervous, what if this backfired? But another part of me was thrilled. For once, the world was going to see what was really happening. Sure enough, Marjorie showed up, her face twisted with rage the second she spotted the reporters. She marched toward them, wagging her finger. "You can't film here. This is private property." She barked. The reporter, cool as ice, smiled at her. "Actually, ma'am, we're standing on a public sidewalk. Perfectly legal." The cameras rolled as she sputtered and fumed. Meanwhile, they interviewed me, my wife, even a few neighbors who, emboldened by the spotlight, finally spoke up. They told the truth that we weren't causing trouble, that the BBQs were harmless, and that the HOA was out of control. Marjorie tried to interrupt, waving her clipboard in front of the cameras, demanding they stop. But every outburst just made her look worse. That night, the story aired on the local news. The headline? Neighborhood HOA tries to ban family BBQs, backlash ensues. I'll never forget sitting in my living room, watching Marjorie's red, furious face on TV. Broadcast for the entire city to see. My phone blew up with texts and calls, friends, coworkers, even distant relatives. Everyone had the same reaction. Laughter and disbelief. But for Marjorie, it was humiliation. And that was just the beginning of her downfall. The morning after the news aired, I walked outside to grab the paper and nearly dropped it when I saw the front page of our local section. A photo of me standing by my grill, tongs in hand, smiling with my family behind me. And right beside it, a shot of Marjorie mid-gel, her face red, clipboard in the air. The headline was brutal. HOA targets family, BBQs, neighbors, and viewers outraged. I chuckled as I carried it inside. My wife read it aloud at the breakfast table, shaking her head. She's going to lose her mind over this. And she did. By noon, my phone started buzzing non-stop with messages from neighbors. Screenshots of the HOA's community page. Angry emails flying back and forth. People who had stayed silent for months were suddenly speaking out. Emboldened by the news coverage, this HOA is out of control. They fined me for leaving my Christmas lights up too long. They threatened my husband over the color of our garage door. It was like a dam had burst. Everyone had a story. Everyone had been afraid to speak up. But now, with Marjorie. Humiliated on TV, they found their voices. By the end of the week, a petition had started circulating, remove Marjorie as HOA president. Dozens of signatures, then hundreds. Marjorie fought back the only way she knew how, by doubling down. She sent out a fiery HOA newsletter accusing me of staging the BBQs for publicity, claiming I was using the community as a platform for personal gain. But no one was buying it. In fact, her rant only made her look worse. The breaking point came 2 weeks later at another HOA meeting. This time, the clubhouse was overflowing. Neighbors who had never attended before packed the room, some standing in the back. The air was buzzing with tension. Marjorie tried to open the meeting with her usual authority, gavel in hand, but people weren't having it. One man stood up and said, "You fined me $200 because my trash can lid was cracked. You said it violated the neighborhood's image. Who do you think you are?" Another woman chimed in, "You made me repaint my shutters because the shade of blue wasn't on your approved color list. Do you know how much that cost me?" It was like a tidal wave of anger crashing down on her. She tried to shout over them, tried to regain control, but her voice was drowned out by the crowd. Finally, one of the board members, a man who had always sat silently beside her, cleared his throat. "Marjorie," he said carefully, "I think it's time we consider stepping down." The room erupted in applause. Her face turned white. She slammed her gavel on the table and stormed out, muttering threats under her breath. That was the night. She lost her grip on the community. But here's the twist: Marjorie wasn't done with me. A few days later, I received something unexpected in the mail. Not a fine, not a notice. This time, it was a personal letter from Marjorie herself. The handwriting was neat, controlled, but the words were dripping with venom. "You may think you've won," it read, "but this isn't over. You embarrassed me on television, and people may laugh at me now, but I don't forgive. Enjoy your BBQs while you can, because soon you'll regret crossing me." I stared at the letter, my stomach sinking. This wasn't just about BBQs anymore. This was personal. That letter from Marjorie rattled me. It wasn't official HOA business anymore. It was personal, almost like a threat. I showed it to my wife, and she pressed her lips together tightly. "She's unhinged," she whispered. "We should report this." I considered it. But part of me wanted to see just how far she was willing to go. And she went far. The next Sunday, I was setting up the grill when I noticed a car parked at the edge of the cul-de-sac. A man sitting inside, camera pointed at my house. At first, I thought it was just some curious neighbor. But then I realized he was documenting everything. An hour later, two men in suits walked into my backyard. They introduced themselves as fire safety inspectors, sent to investigate illegal open flames. I knew immediately who was behind it. Marjorie, she had filed a complaint with the county fire department, claiming my BBQ pit was a hazard. But here's the thing: our grill was standard, legal, and completely safe. The inspectors took one look, asked me a couple of questions, and shook their heads. "Sorry to bother you, sir. Looks like someone wasted our time." As they left, I saw Marjorie standing at the corner, arms crossed, watching like a hawk. When she noticed me looking, she quickly turned away. It didn't stop there. Over the next 2 weeks, she filed complaints with the city zoning office, the health department, even animal control, saying our dog was dangerously aggressive because it barked at her once when she walked by. Each time officials came, checked, and left, shaking their heads. No violations. Nothing wrong. But it was exhausting. My wife sat me down one night. "This has gone too far. We can't just wait for her to stop. We need to hit back." And she was right, so I gathered every letter, every notice, every bogus complaint. I compiled them into a thick folder. Then I sent copies to the same reporter, who had covered our BBQ story. When he called me back, he was practically laughing. "You're kidding me? She's still at it?" "Oh, she's relentless," I said. "But I think people need to see the full picture." A week later, the news ran a follow-up story. HOA president harasses family with endless complaints. They showed the stack of notices, the county complaint forms, even snippets from Marjorie's personal letter. It was damning. And this time, it didn't just stay local. The story spread online, picked up by bigger outlets, shared on social media. Thousands of comments poured in. "Who calls the fire department on a BBQ? This woman needs a hobby. She's the reason people hate HOAs. The ridicule was merciless. By the next HOA meeting, Marjorie didn't even show her face. She resigned quietly, leaving behind a legacy of pettiness and control. The board replaced her with a neighbor who was far more reasonable. And the first thing they did, they abolished the no BBQ gatherings rule altogether. That weekend, we held the biggest cookout yet. Neighbors I'd never spoken to before showed up, carrying casseroles, desserts, drinks. People hugged me, clapped me on the back, thanked me for standing up when no one else dared. And as the sun set, I looked around, kids laughing, smoke curling from the grill, music playing, and I realized something. This was never just about food. It was about community. About not letting one person's bitterness choke out the joy of many. Marjorie thought she could control us with her clipboard and her fines. But in the end, all she did was unite us. And as I flipped a burger onto my son's plate, I couldn't help but smile. Because sometimes the best revenge is simply living free and enjoying the smell of good barbecue. So, what did I learn from all of this? That sometimes the biggest battles aren't about money, power, or even property, they're about principle. My family just wanted to share meals together, laugh with our neighbors, and make memories. And yet, one person's bitterness turned it into a war. But here's the truth. Rules should exist to protect a community, not to control it. The moment people start using power to tear others down instead of lifting them up, that's when the community suffers. In the end, our BBQs became more than just cookouts. They became a symbol. A reminder that no matter how hard someone tries to silence joy, you can't shut down togetherness. You can't find away love. Marjorie thought she had the power, but all she did was show us how strong we were when we stood united. And now, every time I light that grill, I don't just taste smoke and seasoning. I taste freedom. So here's my message to you. Don't let anyone steal your joy. Stand up for what matters, even when it feels small. Because sometimes the smallest fights end up leaving the biggest marks. And if you're ever caught between doing what's easy and doing what's right, fire up the grill, take a deep breath, and remember, sometimes the best victory is just living your life the way you choose.